We'll start with the prayers. Om Sahana Bhavato Sahanau Bhunakto Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We are studying the chapter 4 of Panchadasi by Swami Vidyaranya. We have finished 27 verses. Today we are going to start the 28th verse. This chapter is devoted to Dvaita Viveka Prakaranam. Prakaranam means methodology of revealing the truth through the Dvaita Prapancha and understanding the Advaita principle behind the Dvaita Prapancha. So this is what we are trying to understand, how we say in Vedanta, in the Upanishads, they reveal Brahman as the reality for the entire universe. And then they say this Brahman is Advaitam. It's non-dual. It alone is. So that is what we are trying to understand in this chapter. To explain this truth, Swami Vidyaranya divides the whole creation into two parts. First, he says there is something called as Ishwara Srishti, which he explained in the first few verses. And we started, that is up to 13th verse, he said, he discussed Ishwara Srishti. From 14th verse to 31st verse is the Jiva Srishti. When we try to understand the methodology of this creation in this format in which Vidyaranya gives it to us, we should be able to understand the Advaita principle of the reality. That is what the whole topic and the discussion is all about, that. So we have finished up to 27th verse, and these verses are talking about how does Jiva Srishti happen in the universe. One basic thing we should understand is Jiva comes into play only when the mind is there. Without the mind, there is no Jivatvam in this world. In sleep, there is no Jivatvam. There is no division of Jiva, Ishwara, and Jagat in sleep. In dream, there is a totally different world. So we are trying to understand this creation. If you understand it with the help of your mind, ultimately everybody has to understand this creation only with the help of his mind. And the mind is in operation only in the waking state. It is this mind of the Jiva which is experiencing the Ishwara Srishti, and at the same time, it is also experiencing the Jiva's projections on that Ishwara Srishti. This is how we should see the picture. Without the mind, there is no world. Be very, very careful in understanding this. You have a mind, your mind is active right now, the world is seen. You also exist in sleep, but the mind is not there. There is no world. There is no Jiva, Jagat, Ishwara. There is nothing. I mean, you may say that for others it is there. But for others also, they are awake. The mind is awake. So the basic fundamental thing we should understand is this Srishti we are talking about is when the mind is awake in the waking state. What happens in the sleep state, dream state is totally different. In the waking state, how does the mind experience the world? In all advanced textbooks of Vedanta, this topic is always there. It's a very deep topic, and it is analyzed in Ishwara Srishti, it is analyzed in Shankaracharya's bhashyams of the Upanishads. Same formatting is used for the experience of creation through the mind. Let us see now the 28th verse. Up to 31st verse is this creation of the Jiva and how he experiences this Srishti.
मूषासिक्तं यथा ताम्रं मूषासिक्तं यथा ताम्रं तन्निभं जायते तथा रूपादीन्याप्नुवच्चित्तं तन्निभं दृश्यते ध्रुवम्.
So here Vidyaranya uses Shankaracharya's text. How Shankaracharya describes Jiva Srishti in Upadesha Sahasri. It's a very famous text of Shankaracharya with 1,000 verses, and it is in that text, in chapter number 14, there are 2 verses. Of course, there in chapter 14, there are many verses which continue on the same topic. So for those of you who are interested to study this particular way of describing the Jiva Srishti and what happens in the mind, you have to go to the 14th chapter of Upadesha Sahasri. There, Shankaracharya gives a simple example. He says, whenever you want to form an idol, like Krishna's idol, first of all, what do? You prepare a mold of Krishna. The mold is in copper. And then what happens? You take that copper mold. Into that copper mold, you pour the melted copper. Copper is the ultimate thing, and we want to have the Vigraham. We want to have the idol of Lord Krishna. So first you prepare a mold. Into that mold you pour copper. And then what happens? The molten copper takes the form of the mold, and then once the molten mold settles down, then you can take out the mold and you can have the idol. This is how actually they prepare the idols. So there are 2 verses here. What it says, the first verse, number 3, it says, pervading the objects, the mind appears to take the form. How? Exactly like the copper tries to take the form of the mold. This is one example. In the next verse, in the 29th verse, he will explain to us the light example. In the light example, what happens? The light, before it reveals the object, it envelops the objects. And then we are able to see the object. Suppose in a dark room, we will not be able to see the objects. In a lighted room, what happens? The light goes and envelops the object, it reveals the object to me. So similarly is this consciousness. It flows through the mind, through the sense organs, it goes to the sense objects. That consciousness is pervaded by the sense objects and it gets revealed. Okay, so this is how these 28th verse and 29th verse are trying to explain the phenomena of revelation by consciousness, the entire world of objects. We can have object with form. We can also have sound. We can also have taste. All these are objects of consciousness. The same principle applies to all the 5 forms of sense objects. Once you have understood this, we have 2 examples. One is the molten, mold and the molten copper. The second is the light pervasion in the objects. By contact with fire, the metal has become liquid. So copper, if you take, it is quite hard. But then what happens? They heat the copper and they make the copper, the solid copper, into liquid copper. That is the first step. Yatha musha sittam. Dravibhutam tambaram. What happens then? That liquid copper, you pour it into a mold. Mold which has got the shape of the idol. Then what happens? That liquid copper takes the shape of the mold. Similarly, our mind has got consciousness reflected in it. What is our mind? Basically, it is an inert matter principle. Mind is inert body, subtle body. Consciousness is reflecting in the mind. So every time when we, as soon as we get up, what happens? We feel that we are aware. That awareness is what is called as consciousness. The moment we get up in the morning, in sleep, what happens? I have no light of consciousness in my mind. This is a fundamental thing you should always remember in understanding Atma. Atma by itself exists independently. Mind is changing. It wakes up, it becomes active, it becomes passive, it becomes semi-passive, according to the states, waking, dream, and sleep. In the waking state, the mind gets a reflection and then it goes through the sense organs to the objects. When it goes there to the objects, it takes the form of the object, it contacts the objects, it pervades the objects, it takes the form of the object, and then what we get is prama. Pramanam, prameyam, pramata. Pramata is the jiva. Prameyam is the object. Pramanam is the mind and sense organs. When you operate these 3, what do you get finally? You get knowledge of the object in your mind, which is called as pramiti or prama. Okay, This is, once you've understood this basic principle, the rest of the notes are very simple to understand. You can just read it, you will understand the whole, all these 3-4 verses, you will easily understand. But the fundamental thing you should remember, there is consciousness, there is reflection in the mind. That is the fundamental, the first step. A question is raised, if this is what is happening, if the world is dependent on consciousness, actually tell me, is there a physical world or not? That was what the Purva Pakshi's question was in the 27th verse. 26, 27 verse we did last week. The Purva Pakshi said, is there any world outside or it's all only in the mind? So Shankaracharya, Bhashyakara is explaining, and Vidyaranya, the Siddhanta, is explaining in these verses, saying that there is a world outside. There is, that is what is called as Srishti Drishti Vada. Srishti Drishti Vada means what? Creation is there, and then I am the Drishta, I am the seer of the creation. So objects are there. It is the Jiva which is projecting his Raga Dvesha. This will be explained later, but I'm explaining to you now how that Jiva, when the object comes into his mind, the Jiva has likes and dislikes in his mind. And then is the Jiva Srishti. This is where the Jiva Srishti starts. I like certain objects, I don't like certain objects, and for certain objects, I am very indifferent. Whether the object is there or not, I don't care. That is how Jiva Srishti happens. So, suppose a pot is there, it is called as Ishwara Srishti. Suppose I say the pot is beautiful. When I project this beautiful nature of the pot, that is what is called as Jiva Srishti. Very simple. So, molten example, copper you have understood, which is what is explained in this particular slide. And then how the mind also goes out, that is what we have seen in the 28th verse. In the 29th verse is the light example. Let us see now the light example.
Vyanjako va yatha loko Vyamjako va yatha loko Vyangyasya karatamiyat Vyangyasya karatamiyat Sarvartha vyanjakatvadvihi Sarvartha vyanjakatvadehi Arthakara pradrishyate Arthakara pradrishyate.
All these verses are chanted by Vijaya, who is one of our participants in this classes. Very good, loud, beautiful voice she has got, and she has chanted so well. Okay, this particular verse takes the light example of Upadesha Sahasri, which I explained to you in the previous verse. Revealer is the manifester. It takes, light is the revealer. What does it do? Vyanjaka, Vyanjya. Vyanjya means revealed object, manifested object. What is Vyanjaka? These are technical terms. I'm just explaining to you so that you understand the meaning of the actual technical terms which Vidyaranya has used. The revealer light, it takes the form of the object. The light bathes the object. What do I see? I see the light image of the object, which is revealed to me. In darkness, I don't see. Object is there, it is inert. It is not self-revealing. By itself, it cannot reveal to me. That light will, when it falls on the object, it illumines that object, and then my eyes are able to see the object. Antakarana has a capacity to reveal the five sense objects. What are the five sense objects? Smell, sound, touch, form, or color, or taste. The same principle you should apply to the Antakarana Buddhi. All the five types of inputs are coming in the form of vritti to the mind. And then in the Antakaranam, in the mind, there is a consciousness principle. That consciousness principle is what is the ultimate revealer. Mind is also revealer, but it is a temporary revealer. It is a secondary revealer. Without consciousness, without the I, the consciousness, there is absolutely no revelation. This is what is the fundamental thing we should remember. And that is what is our aim. Our aim is to reach that, that ultimate consciousness, which is called as Brahman or Atma, and understand that that is my real nature. The sense objects are external, they are not me. The eyes are in the body by itself, it doesn't have any power. Again, therefore the eyes are not me. The eyes are in the body, external body is not me. Mind is there, but mind is not always there. Mind comes in the waking, it goes off in the sleep state. So ultimately, what Sureshwaracharya and Shankaracharya are revealing is there is a consciousness principle, which is totally different than matter. It is not the sharirams are all matter principle. So we negate all the anatmas and ultimately come to realize that I am that ultimate light of consciousness. Okay, so this through the Jiva Srishti, we are trying to go and understand who am I. Sureshwaracharya's, so we have seen Shankaracharya in the last two verses, in 28 and 29. Sureshwaracharya, his verse is included in this particular 30th verse.
मातुर्मानाभिनिष्पत्तेः मातुर्मानाभिनिष्पत्तिः निष्पन्नं मेयमेति तत् निष्पन्नं मेयमेति तत् मेयाभिसङ्गतं तच्च मेयाभिसङ्गतं तच्च मेयाभत्वं प्रपद्यते मेयाभत्वं प्रपद्यते.
If you have understood the last two verses, this verse is very easy. It is the same principle. He is giving it to us in a different way. Sureshwaracharya in Naishkarmya Siddhi, he and also in Manasolasa, I have quoted here this particular verse of Manasolasa, and in this verse he gives the how does the knowledge takes place in the mind. Same principle. Because all of them use the same consciousness as the ultimate knower. Chaitanyam is the ultimate knower. That is the light in which all the sense objects are revealed. That is the spiritual light. There is no other light compared to that in the world. What light which you see in the world is the light of fire, the light of the sun. The light of the sun is nothing but fire in a different way. The tube light and all that which we see is also another type of fire only, another type of light only. But they are all inert light principles. They are not consciousness. You see, that is the difference between the spiritual light and the inert light, which we see. These are all elemental lights, but what is the light of consciousness is, it is a sentient principle. So here, Pramata contacts the Prameyam through the Pramanam, which is what I've explained before. Pramanam is the Antakaranam Buddhi. Prameyam is the object of knowledge which are coming from the five sense objects. Pramata is the reflected consciousness in the mind, which is called as Chidabasa. That is the Pramata, that is the Jiva. So the Jiva uses his Buddhi, contacts the objects outside and gets the knowledge. That is what is explained by Sureshwara Acharya in Manasolasa. Manasolasa is what? It is a commentary of Dakshinamurti Stotram. Dakshinamurti Stotram has got 10 verses. In those 10 verses, Sureshwara Acharya has written a commentary. In that commentary, for the third verse of Dakshinamurti, Nana Chit Ghato Darasti Tamaha Deepa Prabhavaswaram, that verse is commented by Sureshwara Acharya in this way. That is the central, that is the root of all these explanations. Dakshinamurti Stotram is the fundamental source for all these explanations of how knowledge takes place according to Vedanta. So this is what I have explained. The basic raw material of the universe, if you ask, it is this Chaitanyam knowledge principle. Very important point. This is the crux of Vedanta. Science and all other philosophers, they take matter as the fundamental principle. Only when you come to the Veda, especially the Vedanta, you will see, and when you come to the Advaita Vedanta, you will come to this format of Chaitanyam. It is Chaitanyam, Chaitanyam, Chaitanyam all the way. Without Chaitanyam, there is nothing in the world. Chaitanyam is non-dual principle. That is what, if you understand the Chaitanya principle, all your sorrows of the world will go away. Correctly, you have to understand. Very, very clear. It requires a very subtle, sharp mind. To understand Chaitanyam is not easy. But if you go through the process, the methodology of Mahavakyam, which we are doing in the Saturday classes, in Mundaka Upanishad, we are doing that Mahavakya portion. If you understand the format there, all these verses become very, very easy. So, all experiences are nothing but knowledge phenomena. Very important. Understand this first. Body is inert. It is not a sentient, knowledge-based principle. And the individual knower gets born only when the mind is there. When the mind contacts the consciousness, On waking up, the pramata is born. And then as soon as the pramata is born, born means what? Not the physical body which is born from the mother's womb. We are not talking of that. Every day in the morning, when you get up from sleep, what happens? You're born into this world again and again. After some time, you drop this body. Again, you take another body. Again, you're coming back to the same world. Again, you start the whole this thing. But here, what we are trying to understand is what lies behind the mind. Behind the mind is this consciousness. And pramata is born through the antakaranam. Without the mind principle, there is no pramata. Okay, pramata starts with the mind and the consciousness reflected in the mind. So the antakaranam, like a car is powered by petrol, the mind is powered by what? By the reflection of consciousness in the mind. So there is original consciousness, there is reflected consciousness, there is mind, there are sense organs, and there are objects. This box here is the totality of all the components which constitute what we call it as experience. Each one of this is important. Without the object, there is no experience. Without the senses, there is no experience. Without the mind, there is no experience. Without the reflected consciousness, no experience. Without the original consciousness, there is no experience, but it alone is. It is independent principle. That is what is my ultimate destination. Going and reaching and understanding this original consciousness is the ultimate destination of our spiritual journey. When I touch a person or a cloth, I extend myself and I am touching the person. Extend myself means what? The consciousness extends itself. I touch a table, I touch a cloth, I touch a person, I touch a flower. So it is the consciousness which is going and touching the flower through the antakaranam and the sense organs. This explains that the antakaranam is jadam by nature. It has no capacity till the reflected consciousness falls in the mind. Then it becomes an instrument for knowledge. As soon as you wake up, only the consciousness which is there, which is always there. Even in sleep, the consciousness is there. But I don't experience the world because mind is not functioning. Body is there. Body is inert. Body is inert. It cannot. So what is the difference between the body which is sleeping and the body which is awake now? The difference is that the mind, there is an instrument in the body called as the mind. That mind gets powered to function for a few hours. It experiences certain things like a car. You put petrol in the car, the petrol helps the car to move. Similarly, the light of consciousness helps all the sense organs to function. So, what happens when when there is a wave? You see, this is another example of how we see this reflection of the sun in the wave. The same principle. consciousness travels through the eyes and then sees. Another example is a mirror example. A mirror which is kept outside a window, and if the sunlight falls on the mirror, it can illumine a dark room. A dark room is illumined because of the mirror. Similarly, our mind is like that mirror, which if it is illumined, it can illumine the entire world. This example is given in Vivek Chudamani. I'm sure you're all familiar with this example. Whenever there is knowledge which is born, the revealer gets born. That means what? That pure consciousness, it is always there. But whenever we experience the world, I experience the body, for example. I see my body. I experience the body means what? I see this body, I see the world. Like I see the world, I see this body also on getting up. The moment I see this body, what happens? My mind is in contact with the body. And then knowledge takes place. There are two terms which are used, vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. This I will just explain to you. Vritti vyapti means that the thought envelops the object. That is called as vyapti. These are two technical terms. It tells us how an object gets revealed. There are two processes which happen in the mind. The first process is the antakaranam vritti. Vritti is a thought. It goes outside and it envelops. For example, you see a flower. The vritti first will go and envelop a flower. Inside the vritti, there is a consciousness, which is the reflected consciousness. When that reflected consciousness goes and along with the vritti to the object, the reflected consciousness will illumine that object and make it known for me. These are the two principles. Just listen to this first time, and then we will be working on these two principles in many chapters of Panchadasi. It will be explained to us again and again. Okay? The steps number 1, 2, 3, 4 is what I have explained to you so far. If you want, you can go through this on your own, but it is the same explanation. I don't want to repeat it. And how this vritti vyapti and phala vyapti work in real terms, that is what is explained in this charts. So with vritti vyapti, you should remember what it is. It is the role of the mind. Phala vyapti means it is a role of the consciousness, the chidabasa. Both of them are used to pervade the object and reveal the object to me. Okay, this is a technical presentation of step 1, 2, 3, 4. What happens when we actually get the knowledge of an object? Definitely, we should understand that there is an external object. That is what Shankaracharya and Vidyaranya is trying to say in these verses. There is a vyavaharika jagat. At the same time, there is a consciousness which is paramarthika. It is not of the world. Consciousness is an independent principle. It is paramarthikam. It is not dependent on the world, it is existing by itself. Jagat, the world is a transactional entity, whereas the pure consciousness is a different entity. It is not connected, it is nothing to do with the world, it is an independent principle. Okay, so what we have to understand is consciousness is the ultimate revealer of the universe. Okay, in all these verses, that's what we have seen. This is a revision portion which I have kept here. For those who want to revise what we have learned, you can go back to that. Now, let's go to the 31st verse, which is the which summarizes what we have learned so far. This is the last verse which talks about Jiva Srishti. After this, we will talk about what creates bondage. Okay, that is from the verse number 32 to 37. Okay.
सत्येवं विषयौ द्वौस्तो सत्येवं विषयौ द्वौस्तो घटौ मृण्मयधीमयौ घटौ मृण्मयधीमयौ मृण्मयो मानमेयः स्यात् मृण्मयो मानमेयः स्यात् साक्षिभास्यस्तु धीमयः साक्षिभास्यस्तु धीमयः.
So this is how Vidyaranya ends the topic of Jiva Srishti. One phase of Jiva Srishti he ends. How does he end? He says, first of all, understand there are two kinds of objects. One is a material object which is outside, which is made up of Panchabhutas, gross. The second is a mental object, which is the subtle body. The gross body is not cognized by the consciousness. It is only the subtle body which is cognized by consciousness. Okay, so this is a very important point about creation itself. You see, whenever we talk about creation, in Vedanta, we say that there is a consciousness, there is an illuminating principle, like the sunlight. That sunlight cannot reach the gross objects, but it has to go through the mind. That is why we say there are two types of objects. One is the material gross body object, and the second is the mental formation of that object in the mind. Without the mental image of an object, whether it is sound, whether it is form, whether it is color, whether it is touch, whether it is taste, whether it is smell, without forming a vritti, a thought in the mind, you will not be able to cognize the object. Thoughts take the form of objects, shows what the object is. So you need an external object and also you need an internal thought. Both of them are necessary. So pot has got external pot, which is Ishwara Srishti. That Ishwara Srishti gets into the mind in the form of thoughts. When it comes into the mind, it becomes Jiva Srishti. Mrinmaya. Mrinmaya means object made of clay. And then Dhimaya. Dhimaya means object in the form of thought. So there is a pramata, which is a knower, which is a subject, which is the jiva. Then there is an object of knowledge, which is prameyam. Pramanam is the antakaranam, the instrument. And then there is pramiti, which is the knowledge. This I have explained in the verses before, so I won't take much time in this. The mental pot, sakshi vasastu dhimayaha. It is the sakshi or the consciousness, the sentient principle, which reveals the mental pot. That is why it is called as witness consciousness. Sakshi, sakshat ikshate iti sakshi. Sakshi directly perceives the thoughts of the objects. But the thoughts, they need an external object. Okay, this I've explained, the light and the mind and the eyes and the pot. This I've already explained to you. So same thing with the help of mountain and knowledge of mountain. We have taken an example of pot and the knowledge of pot. Now Vidyaranya is asking, what is the cause of samsara? Is Ishwara Srishti the cause of problems for me, agitations for me, or is it the Jiva Srishti which is the cause for samsara? Answer is very simple. Ishwara Srishti is an indirect cause. Objects are there outside, but the direct cause of samsara is my own mind. There is no Jiva Srishti without Ishwara Srishti. So there are two causes. Jiva Srishti is the direct cause. Jiva Srishti depends on the objects outside, which is the Ishwara Srishti. Okay. I will try and take one more verse today.
अन्वयव्यतिरेकाभ्याम् धीमयो जीवबन्धकृत् सत्यस्मिन् सुखदुःखेषु तस्तस्मिन्न सति न द्वयम्.
From 32nd onwards, Vidyaranya, verse number 32 onwards, he will give you several examples. Vidyaranya will give examples to show how it is the Jiva Srishti which is the cause of samsara. What causes bondage for the Jiva is Jiva Srishti. If I know that this is a problem, then I know what is the solution for this. Vidyaranya will give us the cause of this problem. He himself will tell us what is this solution. We use the method of Anvaya Vratireka, the law of invariable concomitance. I'll explain to you, it's a very simple thing. You will be able to understand. Suppose there is a person who is creating noise and he is there. If he is there, noise is there. Suppose somebody is shouting outside in a loud voice. The noise is there, person is there. That is what is called as Anvaya, the presence of noise, disturbance, along with the person. When the person is not there, there is co-absence. There is no noise, there is no disturbance. So co-presence and co-absence, they reveal to us that cause of the problem. Person is not there, noise is not there, co-absence. Therefore, what? Through Anvaya Vidyarika, we can say when the mind is there, there is a samsara. When there is no mind and sleep, there is no samsara. Therefore, what is the cause of samsara? It is the mind. Jiva Srishti, Jiva's buddhi is the cause of bondage. It is the cause of sukham and dukkha. Ishwara Srishti is not the cause of bondage. Vidyaranya will give one or two examples after this to show that it is the mind which gives us the sorrow. The moment the mind gets the news about something, it feels sorrowful. Till the mind gets the news that something has happened, there is no sorrow for that person. So bondage is basically created because of duality. In sleep, there is no duality. I am free. That is why I keep on saying in sleep, I am absolutely blissful. I am in my original nature of Advaita Ananda. Only problem is that it is mixed with Tamo Guna. Therefore, there is a veiling of my nature. Vedantic study removes the veiling and says, remove the tamas, remove that Maya portion and see that that is what is you. That is your real nature, whatever you understand that to be. Because the mind cannot conceptualize that. Words cannot describe that. Whatever it is, I've told you the thing. I've told you that in sleep, remove the tamo guna, the ignorance portion. Whatever is the balance left out portion is consciousness. That is what is the way in which Upanishads reveal consciousness. In sleep, we are identified with what? The ignorance, the karana sharira. Okay? So here, just coming back to it, experience of sukham and dukkham is what is called as samsara. Both together is samsara. That is why it is called as duality. So by Anvaya Vidyarika, we can say that when the mind is there, sukham and dukkham is experienced. When the mind is not there, there is no sukham and dukkham. Sukham and dukkham. Sukham and dukkham means what? Joy and sorrow. They are the direct result of the mind. That is what is the essence of this particular verse, the 32nd verse. It only says that the mind is the cause of joy and sorrow. Mind is there. When is the mind there? Waking and dream. When waking and mind is there in waking dream, there is joy and sorrow. When mind is not there, in deep sleep, there is no joy and sorrow. I am in my original Swarupam, my real nature. Nature means what? It is my resting place. This body, mind, and world, and Vedantic knowledge, all this is incidental. So Anvaya Vidyarika is a method to explain to me the cause of bondage, which is mind, and then it helps me to understand that this samsara is caused when the mind is there. Okay, so this is Anvaya Vidyarika. We have seen this methodology before also. This is just a reminder to show how mind is the cause. Mind, and what is the mind? Mind is Jiva Srishti. Okay, so therefore, Jiva Srishti is the cause of samsara. That is the starting point of telling us bondage, how bondage is created. Okay, in the next week, I will take up this example, what happens in the case of dream, in the case of sleep. A little bit more explanation is given here. Then Vidyaranya himself will give a couple of examples to prove that it is the mind, always the mind. So what is a lesson we should learn from here in this whole chapter? What is the central message we should learn? We should learn always to understand that it is the mind which is the cause of all my problems. If I know how to control my mind, if I know how my mind works, for example, I told you the methodology of the working of the mind. This will help me to understand what is Atma, what is consciousness. If I understand the mechanism of the working of the mind, it helps me to understand and reduce my external problems. Because ultimately, things are all experienced where it is not experienced in the body, in the physical body. It is all coming into the mind. That's why Ramana Maharishi always used to say, always used to ask, tell me who is suffering. The moment you go and find out the root of that who is the I which is suffering in this body, what happens is you dissolve the mind in consciousness. That was the trick of Ramana Maharishi. All his lectures, just understand one thing. Mind dissolves in consciousness. Volumes and volumes of books are written by Ramana Maharishi. Fundamental, if you take the basis of all that is human mind. That is why in the and where did he get this knowledge? From the Upanishads. He's only applying the knowledge of Upanishads and explaining to people that this is how you are suffering. And silencing the mind is removing the problems in the mind. Therefore, maunam vyakhyanam. Ramana Maharishi used to say, just remain in silence. When you remain in silence, your mind will get dissolved into that consciousness. And then you will find it has given you the peace which you are seeking. Okay. Next week, I will continue from 33rd verse onwards. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnahat Purnamudachade Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyade. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. There are no questions on the chat box. If you have any questions, you can ask them. Yeah, Deepak, you have a question?
Yeah, very interesting today. I really found it mentally stimulating.
Yes.
because I think it sort of culminates in all that we have learned,
Yes.
and it is sort of. So what it says is that the light of consciousness modified to the mind sees Ishwara Srishti, the external,
Correct. Yes.
and then brings it into the mind's image, mind,
Yes.
and becomes aware of it.
Yes.
That's the whole process. It sort of says that the pramana contacts the prameya and through the pramanam.
That's correct. Yes.
So, and when what it does is the light reveals the object, and that brings the ignorance also.
That's correct. Yes.
So the whole thing that we've learned on Adhyasa is also is being explained in this manner.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Advaitam is explained very beautifully in this methodology of explanation of how the knowledge takes place.
So what we see is that we see the Jiva Srishti and the Ishwara Srishti actually are the erroneous and superimposition on the consciousness.
That's correct. Yes.
Is actually.
Yes. Now you're able to understand where is the error taking place.
That's the error that is taking place.
That's correct. Yes.
So the question is that the mind, the consciousness needs the mind to experience this. The mind
That's
is
correct. Consciousness needs the mind
to experience this.
Yes.
Without the mind, it is all consciousness that pervades.
That's it. There is only consciousness which is there all the time.
All the time. So yeah, I'm getting the pramati is basically what it says that awareness is pramati.
That's correct. Pramati means the knowledge of an object which comes to me finally in the form of the operation of the pramanam.
Which is the erroneous belief, which is
yes.
the superimposition.
Correct.
So basically, what you're saying is that the object gets superimposed on the
consciousness,
or on, and the mind is the upadhi. So again,
yes.
from here, the mind, it needs the mind as an upadhi.
Yes.
Is the reflective medium.
That's
on
right.
This objects get superimposed.
Correct.
Real.
Yes.
Very well. So it's
beautiful. Very good. You have understood the whole topic 100% correctly.
Very well.
Excellent. Anybody else has a question? This is a very deep topic.
Very deep topic.
Very deep. You know, these verses are taking us straight into consciousness, you know, into our real nature. It will require a subtle mind to pick up these nuances. Bahubai, any questions?
No, Shikali.
Okay.
Thank
anyway,
you.
I wish you all a very happy Diwali.
Same to you.
And I hope your celebrations are going on. And we'll meet again next week.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you, Sumana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir.
Hari Om, Akshay. Thank you.
Happy Diwali. Yeah.